Hey everyone, Lexi here, and welcome to my first voiceover video for YouTube. So what I'm going to talk about today is the piece that I'm working on, as well as a little bit of an introduction to myself. As you all know, I'm a digital artist, and I haven't actually been doing it all that long. 8 months actually so far to this date, but before that I was actually a tattoo artist for the best part of 7 years. So yeah, I decided to take a career change, and I was absolutely fascinated with digital art, fantasy art, and how these people could create these beautiful magical pieces and make it seem completely effortless at the same time. So yeah, recently I decided that that's what I want to do. I want to give it a go. I'm also one for being quite changed in my career path. I mean, I I can never really stick to one thing. So I started off doing portraits and fan art and all that sort of thing. Whereas now I'm starting to lean more towards fantasy art. So mythical creatures, landscapes, telling a story in where I create. So yeah, that's pretty much the path that I'm going down at the moment, especially with this piece here. As you can see, I start off with quite basic imagery and slowly build it up more like a painting. That's mostly because that's what I used to do when I was younger. I mean, I was introduced to art at a very, very young age. My grandfather actually taught me the basics the moment he realised that I could hold a pen and pencil. So from being like 2-3 years old, I was fascinated with art. My grandfather taught me how to use watercolours and would show me frequently all the things that he created. He'd go out and go on holidays, take his sketchbooks and paint what he sees while he's on holiday, and then bring them back and tell me all about it. And if there was a piece that I hadn't seen before while I was going through his sketchbooks, I'd be like, "Oh, Grandad, come on, tell me what this is all about. Where have you been? And why is it being painted in these colours? And why does it look so soft?" And he absolutely loved it. He loved sitting me down and talking about all the things that he's seen and where he's been. So I should talk a little more about the piece that I'm working on. It was actually a bit of a random idea that just popped into my head. I tend to have these random bits of inspiration that appear just out of nowhere, and they turn out to be the most fun pieces that I do. But I really enjoyed creating this one, and you'll notice that I make a hell of a lot of changes. I use so many different brushes, and I try different looks to the dragon, and it's mostly because I'm still really new to this. This is actually a new painting app as well that I'm using, one that auto saves and does the time-lapse recording as well. And that's mostly because I've had a lot of bad experiences in the past where I've done the time-lapse and then the app's crashed for one reason or another, and I've ended up losing hours worth of work. So I got this app, I think it's called Sketchbook. I will have to double check the name of it. But it's absolutely amazing. It's got so many different brushes. You can work at different size canvases. Obviously, the bigger the canvas, the more limited you are to the amount of layers you can use, which sucks a little bit because I like to make big pieces so I can put in as much detail as possible, but then that restricts me to around 11 layers, which you'll notice during this video that I actually tend to merge things down a hell of a lot. which also restricts the amount of detail that I can put in, the amount of characters that I can put in. But I guess I'll have to learn to just make smaller pieces. But yeah, everything that I do recently is very much experimentation. Just to see what the capabilities are of the apps and what my capabilities are as well. But it's also to see what variations and effects that I can create and what suits best. Which I guess that's what most digital artists do. I'm not sure that most will work the same way that I do. But I prefer to start with one set of colours, and then I'll find, using the colour selector, I'll try and change the tones and make it stand out a little bit more. I mean, you've just seen me change the dragon from being blue to this emerald colour, and I think it stands out so much more, whilst at the same time complementing all the different blues and the different cool hues that's in the piece so far. As you'll notice in a lot of my pieces, I like to add like glow effects, almost like a bioluminescent look. I just think it adds a more magical quality to fantasy art. And it also makes it stand out a hell of a lot more. I love to see the painted effects in different fantasy art, but I don't think I'm quite at that level yet for being confident enough with just realistic tones. I'm having way too much fun with the glow effects anyway, so adding the stars in here, it gives the eyes something a little more subtle to sort of balance out the rest of the glow. I've even added a bit of glow to the eyes of the dragon. So again, I think if I didn't at this point in the piece, they would look very, very dull. And I very much like to have any of the creatures I create, or humanoids that I create, I like to have them a little bit of life, a little bit of glow to their eyes. Otherwise, I don't know. I just really appreciate eyes looking like they're alive. At this point, I was actually quite reluctant to add the dragon's claws in, well, the hand itself, not just the claws. But I felt like that this side of the cave seemed a little bit dull, a little bit empty. So I thought that it would be best to still include my original idea of having the dragon sort of grabbing onto the rock as it's climbing up. Also gives it a little bit more of a natural pose with how it's craning its neck over. It would need a little bit of support for a creature so big. Here you'll see quite a good example of how much I change my pieces. If you remember in the initial sketch, it was going to be this small person sort of almost looking like it's squaring up to the dragon. But then I thought, no, I think any regular person, I know this is a fantasy piece and, you know, we don't generally have regular people in these extraordinary worlds. So yeah, I thought any regular person would sort of freak out at this sudden appearance of a dragon, and that's what I wanted our young adventurer to sort of look like she's stumbled backwards onto the rocks after this sudden, you know, dragon poking its nose in, going, hi, what are you doing here? But I didn't want it to be a threatening scene. I wanted it to be more of a scene of curiosity. So she doesn't look too afraid, so more surprised at what's going on. And the dragon doesn't look as though he's about to eat her for a snack. He's probably considering it, but who knows. You'll also notice again that I'm totally changing up the colours, and that's because I start off with the basics. So the light skin tones, basic adventurers' clothing colours. So those that who play D&D will completely understand what I'm talking about. The basic greens and browns and of the leathers and the hoods that you can get and cloaks. And I'm a total D&D nerd at the same time. Recently getting into the game over the last couple of years. So I've also got plans to draw my characters and the situations that they get themselves in, but yeah, I noticed that the greens and the browns that I was using at the time were a little bit too harsh and way too bright for the atmosphere that I was going for. So the colours tend to jump out a little bit too much. So I changed the level. I used a nifty little nifty little trick that you can change the hues and saturations. So I didn't want the girl to be the focus of the piece. The dragon is the focus, of course, but I thought she would be quite a nice addition to sort of tell a little bit more of a story, because I prefer to do that in my pieces, to tell a story over what's happening, or allow the viewers to make their own stories over what's happening. At this point, I'm pretty much finishing up the piece, adding the signature and everything. So I want to take a moment just to say thank you so much for joining in, for listening to me ramble on. And if you liked it, then please drop a like and a subscribe. It would really help me out. And I hope to catch you guys next time. Bye!